The whole ballroom laughed when the Duke pointed at her. Not because she had said anything foolish, not because she had stumbled. They laughed because she was the plainest girl in the room. The musicians stopped playing. Crystal glasses froze halfway to eager lips. Every eye turned toward the young maid, standing near the wall with a tray in her trembling hands. Her name was Clara Bell, a girl nobody noticed, unless they needed a floor scrubbed or a firelit dot. The Duke of Velv. Blackthorn smiled lazily, as if he had just discovered a new form of entertainment. Her, he announced loudly. If I must choose a partner for the harvest dance, I choose her. More laughter echoed through the grand hall. Clara felt her cheeks burn. The Duke's wealthy guests understood exactly what he was doing. He was mocking her. Annual Harvest Ball was famous across the territory. Every wealthy rancher brought daughters dressed in silk and jewels, hoping to catch the attention of powerful men. And tonight, instead of choosing one of them, the Duke had chosen a maid, a plain maid, a servant with rough hands and a faded dress. The women glared at her. The men smirked. Clara lowered her eyes. You don't have to do this, Your Grace, she whispered. The Duke leaned closer. His voice was quiet enough that only she could hear. That's exactly why I'm doing it. The cruelty struck harder than a slap. A fresh wave of laughter spread through the room. Slowly, Clara placed the tray aside. Then she lifted her chin. If Your Grace wishes to dance, then I will dance. The room fell strangely silent. Something in her voice surprised them. Maybe it was dignity. Maybe it was courage. Duke offered his hand. She accepted it. Orchestra began playing. They stepped onto the polished floor. At first, the Duke wore the same amused smile. But then something happened. For the first time, he actually looked at her. Not at her dress, not at her position. Her. And suddenly his smile faded. Clara's eyes were unlike anything he had ever seen. Not beautiful in the way society measured beauty. Not sparkling with flirtation. They carried storms. Grief. Strength. A loneliness so deep it seemed carved into her soul. The Duke missed a step. The room noticed. His hand tightened around hers. For one brief second, the world around them disappeared. Then Clara spoke. Are you satisfied, Your Grace? The question struck him unexpectedly. He opened his mouth but found no answer, because for the first time in years, he felt ashamed. The dance ended. The applause returned, but something had changed. The Duke watched her walk away, and he could not stop thinking about those eyes. That night, long after the guests had gone to bed, he found himself staring out his window toward the servants' quarters, wondering who Clara Bell really was. And downstairs, hidden inside a small wooden box beneath her bed, Clara held a secret powerful enough to destroy everything he believed about himself. 3 days later, the Duke still couldn't forget her. It irritated him. Women had chased him his entire life. Beautiful women, ambitious women, women who memorized his favorite wine and laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Yet somehow the maid who barely looked at him haunted every thought. One afternoon he found her repairing a broken fence near the horse paddock. The sun hung low over the prairie, golden. Light painted everything in amber. Clara worked quietly, unaware that he was watching. Or perhaps she simply didn't care. That isn't a servant's job. She didn't turn around. Then perhaps you should hire better workers. The Duke almost laughed. Almost. Nobody spoke to him like that. You're not afraid of me? Now she looked at him. No. Why? Her answer came immediately. Because I've already lost everything worth losing. The words hit harder than expected. The Duke frowned. What does that mean? Clara returned to her work. It means some wounds are bigger than fear. For a long moment neither spoke. A wind swept across the grasslands. Finally the Duke said, "Tell me about yourself." "No." The direct refusal shocked him. "No? You never wanted to know before." The Duke had no response. Because she was right. Weeks passed, despite himself. He kept finding reasons to visit her. Sometimes near the stables. Sometimes in the kitchens. Sometimes in the gardens. And every conversation left him wanting another. Slowly, he discovered pieces of her. She loved books. She could quote poetry from memory. She played piano beautifully when nobody was listening. She fed injured animals in secret. And beneath all her strength lived a sadness she never explained. One evening he heard music drifting through the mansion. A piano. Soft and haunting. Following the sound, he entered an empty ballroom. Clara sat alone at the instrument. Her fingers danced across the keys. The melody carried heartbreak. Lost. Longing. The Duke stood frozen. When she noticed him, the music stopped. "Why did you stop?" She looked away. "Because you weren't supposed to hear." "Why?" A shadow crossed her face. "Because some songs belong to ghosts." Before he could ask more, she stood, but as she turned, something slipped from her pocket. A photograph. Old and worn. The Duke picked it up. And his blood ran cold. The man in the photograph was his father. 20 years younger, standing beside a woman he had never seen before. And holding a little girl who looked exactly like Clara. The room seemed to spin. Slowly, he lifted his gaze. Clara had gone pale. "Where did you get this?" Tears filled her eyes. "Give it back. Who are you?" She stepped backward. "Please, tell me the truth." A tear rolled down her cheek. Then she whispered words that shattered his world. "I think your father was mine too." And before he could stop her, she ran, leaving the Duke alone with a photograph that threatened to destroy his family name forever. The truth arrived like a wildfire. Fast. Merciless. Impossible to control. The Duke spent days searching through old letters, records, and forgotten documents. Every discovery led to another. Every answer created new questions. And all roads pointed toward one conclusion. His father had loved another woman before marrying into wealth. A poor woman. A woman named Eleanor Bell, Clara's mother. The deeper he dug, the worse it became. Letters revealed promises. Promises of marriage. Promises of a future. Together. Then suddenly the letters stopped. Not because Eleanor ended them, because his grandfather had intervened. A wealthy nobleman could not allow his son to marry a poor ranch girl. The relationship had been destroyed. Money changed hands. Threats were made. Lives were ruined. And months later, Eleanor gave birth to Clara. Alone. Abandoned. Forgotten. The Duke felt sick. His family had stolen Clara's future before she even took her first breath. That evening he found her standing beside a river, outside town. The sunset painted the water red. Like spilled blood. She knew why he had come. "You found the truth." He nodded. For several seconds neither spoke. Then Clara laughed bitterly. Not a happy laugh. A broken one. "Do you know what the worst part is?" "No. My mother never hated him." The Duke listened quietly. She loved him until the day she died. Tears glistened in her eyes. She kept every letter. His chest tightened. "Clara, my entire life I wondered why I wasn't enough." Her voice cracked. "Why nobody wanted us." The Duke moved closer. "You were always enough." She looked at him. And for the first time, all her defenses collapsed. Years of pain poured out. Years of loneliness. Years of pretending. She was stronger than she felt. The Duke wrapped his arms around her. She didn't pull away. Instead, she cried against his chest. And something dangerous happened, something neither of them expected. The moment lasted too long. Their hearts beat too close together. The Duke realized he no longer saw her as a servant, or even as a possible sister, because the records were incomplete. The truth remained uncertain. And despite every warning in his mind, he had fallen in love with her. A week later, confirmation finally arrived. Lawyer from another territory brought sealed documents. The Duke opened them with shaking hands. Then read them twice. 3 times. The evidence was clear. His father was not Clara's father. Someone had forged records years earlier. Clara and the Duke shared no blood. Relief flooded through him, but it lasted only seconds, because another message arrived that same day. One of the wealthiest families in the territory had offered a marriage alliance, a union that would save Blackthorn, a state from financial ruin. The Duke's advisors urged immediate acceptance. Without it, everything his family owned could be lost. That night he stared at the letter, then thought of Clara. For the first time in his life, duty and love stood on opposite sides of the battlefield, and only one could survive. The engagement announcement broke Clara's heart. She heard it from servants before hearing it from him. The Duke would marry Miss Victoria Hawthorne. Beautiful, rich, perfect, exactly. The kind of woman society expected. Clara felt foolish. She should have known better. Fairy tales belonged to other women, girls like her. That evening she packed her belongings. A few dresses, a few books. Her mother's photograph, nothing more. She planned to leave before dawn. All goodbyes. No tears. No scenes. Just disappear. But fate had other plans. As she stepped outside the servants' quarters, the Duke appeared, breathless, desperate. You're leaving. You have a wedding to plan. Pain flashed across his face. Clara, listen to me. There is nothing left to say. Everything is left to say. She turned away. He caught her hand. I love you. The words hung between them. Raw. Terrifying. Real. Clara closed her eyes. Those words were everything she had dreamed of hearing, and everything she feared. Then why marry her? The Duke struggled to answer, because the truth sounded pathetic, because love wasn't the only thing at stake. His estate employed hundreds of families. If Blackthorn collapsed, they would suffer too. I don't know how to save everyone. Tears filled Clara's eyes. There it is. What? The difference between us. He stared at her. You were raised believing you could save the world. Her voice trembled. I was raised knowing sometimes you lose the people you love. The Duke stepped closer. I will find another way. Will you? Silence answered. Because neither of them believed it. Clara touched his face one final time. A gentle touch, a heartbreaking one. Then she whispered, goodbye, and walked away into the darkness. The next morning she was gone. Weeks passed. The Duke searched. Everywhere. No trace. No letters. Nothing. The mansion felt empty. The world felt colorless. Then disaster struck. A fire erupted inside Blackthorn's grain warehouses. Flames consumed everything. Financial ruin became inevitable. The marriage alliance collapsed instantly. His future disappeared overnight. Standing among the ashes, the Duke realized something. He had sacrificed love to save his estate, and now he had lost both. But just when all hope seemed gone, a rider arrived carrying a letter. A letter from Clara. And what it contained would change everything. The letter was short, only a few lines. But each word felt like a heartbeat. I know who started the fire. Meet me in Silver Creek. Come. Alone. The Duke left immediately. For 2 days he rode across open prairie. Dust followed behind him like a ghost. His horse nearly collapsed from exhaustion. But he never slowed, because for the first time in months, hope had returned. When he reached Silver Creek, Clara was waiting beside an old church. Seeing her again stole the breath from his lungs. She looked different, got stronger, got more confident, yet her eyes remained the same. The eyes he had never forgotten. "I found evidence," she said. She handed him documents. The Duke read them carefully, then stared in disbelief. One of his own advisors had arranged the fire, the same advisor who pushed the marriage alliance. The man planned to buy Blackthorn Estate. After its collapse, every disaster had been engineered. Every crisis manipulated. Together, they exposed the scheme. The advisor was arrested. His stolen money was recovered. And slowly, Blackthorn Estate began to heal. But none of that mattered as much as the conversation that came afterward. The one both had avoided for too long. The Duke found Clara, standing beneath the evening sky. The church bells echoed softly through town. "I almost lost you." She looked down. "You did lose me." The truth hurt because it was true. He stepped closer. "I chose fear." She remained silent. "I convinced myself I was protecting everyone." His voice cracked. "But really, I was afraid to fight for what mattered." Tears gathered in Clara's eyes. The Duke dropped to one knee. Not like a nobleman, not like a duke, like a man in love. A man asking for forgiveness. "You once asked if I was satisfied." Her lips trembled. "I remember. I wasn't." He took her hand. "I have never been satisfied with a life that doesn't include you." A tear slipped down her cheek. The sunset wrapped them in gold. For a moment, neither moved. And Clara smiled, a real smile, one he had waited months to see. "You are incredibly stubborn." A laugh escaped him. "I've been told that." "And reckless." "Also true." She shook her head. Then finally whispered the words his heart needed most. "I love you too." The Duke stood and pulled her into his arms. This time she didn't cry from sadness. This time she cried because the journey was over. The loneliness. The uncertainty. The years of believing she wasn't enough. Gone. Months. Later the people of Blackthorn gathered for another grand celebration. But this one felt different. No cruelty. No humiliation. No mocking laughter. Only joy. As Clara walked toward the man waiting for her, she remembered that terrible night when he had chosen her simply to embarrass her. How strange life was. The cruelest moment of her life had led to the greatest love she would ever know. The Duke looked at her the same way. He had during that first dance. Only. Now there was no confusion. No pride. No walls. Just love. Pure and undeniable. When they exchanged vows, many guests cried, not because a duke had married a maid, but because everyone knew the truth. Love had survived. Every obstacle placed before it. Wealth. Pride. Secrets. Fear. All of it had fallen away. Years later, whenever people asked how their story began, Clara would smile softly. She never mentioned the humiliation. She never mentioned the pain. Instead, she would simply say, "He looked at me." And somehow those 4 words contained an entire lifetime. Because sometimes one glance changes nothing. And sometimes one glance changes everything.